Hello again, everyone. Hell's Unicorn here again. I just wanted to take this occasion, this sad and unfortunate occasion, to tell another story about a younger version of myself. This story is similar to the one that I told at the passing of Ronnie James Dio, but it's a younger version of me still. It's the version of me before I really knew what pessimism was, what it was like to know the way the world is, and to be either revolted by it or to accept it in spite of how bad it can get. In my elementary school days, the person that I really looked up to, the guy that I really thought was the definition of cool, was my oldest brother, who was in his early high school days at the time. This was actually mid-high school, I guess I should say. My other brother was early high school. It was 1988, 1989, around that era. This was back when MTV was actually worth a damn. This is when you saw actual musicians putting together works of art. This was the era when you had bands as diverse as Motley Crue engaging in exploits of debauchery, and you had socially conscious musicians like Midnight Oil writing politically motivated music about the plight of Aboriginals in Australia. It was a good time for me, because when I watched Slash wailing away on the guitar, or even the epitome of shallowness in Poison, just dancing around up on the stage, having nothing but a good time, that was kind of when I first got drawn into the world of rock music and music in general. It wouldn't be for another 3 or 4 years before I'd actually pick up a guitar and actually start dabbling in the art form for myself. But this was when I found something that I could actually grab hold of and sort of go off into my own world with. And most of the music that I consumed at that time was motivated by what was popular with people about 5 or 6 years older than me. And a part of me never really left that. When the advent of grunge and alternative rock came about, part of me wanted to look back instead of looking forward, and that's what I did. And I remember one particular occasion where my brother, both of my brothers, I think, or I think it was just my oldest brother, went to see Warrant live over in Baltimore Arena, I think. And he actually got to go backstage with the band, hang out with them, actually hang out with the epitome of hotness, Bobby Brown, as well. I mean, that's something that, if I'd been his age, that would have been a hell of a good time. And he told me about how into it they were when they were on stage, the way this band just played their hearts out. Even though at the time they weren't really taken seriously, they were considered just another pop glam rock group. And maybe to an extent there was something to that when you looked at some of the songs that they wrote. But I think the passion that they exuded on stage, from my brother's testimony, was perhaps rivaled only by bands that had inspired them in the first place. Those crazy but lovable 70s rock bands, including the iconic Kiss, who went out there just to put on the best show that they could and didn't really spend the entire concert staring down on their shoes as if the world was worthy of nothing but their contempt. And I remember a particular song from that period, which was considered basically like I think it was considered a ripoff of a couple of ballads that had been written a couple years prior, but it was Sometimes She Cries. And I remember seeing the music video for this, and a young married couple going, I assume it was a married couple, but they had already had a young child, and things just looked like they were falling apart. And then, towards the end, there was actual resolution. There was actually a good ending. Something you don't hear about much anymore. The couple reconciling and things going back to the way that they were. Part of that younger and optimistic version of me died when I found out that singer Jani Lane had departed this world, and had departed the world a very broken man. It was very different than what happened with Dio. With Dio, it was just a little bit of alcoholism or a little bit of overindulgent in the last legal drug catching up with him at a later age. This was a guy who could have very much been in the game, but you could see it in his face. The last 10 years of his life, he just couldn't keep it together. It's almost a tragic case of irony that a person who put out music that was so optimistic and so upbeat could come to such a sad end. But at the same time, when I reflect upon the world as it is today, it's all too commonplace. But at least I can say that in those moments of youth, when these songs that I still occasionally listen to kind of escape from the world to, that there was a time where he and the others in the band had fits of brilliance and were actually capable of seeing the world as it probably should have been. And I'm sorry, I'm having kind of a hard time keeping it together. I'm not really sure what it is. I mean, Warrant isn't really so much the greatest band I've ever heard, but it's a band that often reminds me of a different point in my life. A point that I'll probably never really get back to. In some respects, maybe this is just me feeling sorry for myself than it is me feeling sorry for Jani and his family. But this is the effect that music can have on people. It can turn them around, give them a different take on things. And who I am today is largely the result of that. And my hope is that other people will come later on down the line to remind us that as bad as things are, there is actually room for a childlike hope and optimism. And that's all from me on this end. With prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, good evening.